90 really full minutes, so in that classic drinking from the fire hose kind of way, I'm going to try to cover a lot. I'll also sort of edit as I go to try to make up the time a little bit. So you don't have to worry about that part. So this is Link Data Ventures, and I am K Waterman. I'm a Sloan Fellow from '06 who was lucky enough while I was here to make friends with some of the folks over at the Computer Science Artificial Intelligence Lab, CSAIL, and have retained an affiliation with them ever since. Participate in research that I'll talk a little bit about as we go through this presentation. So without further ado, what is linked data? Linked data is a concept created by the same person who brought you the web. So not the internet. Lots of people here know the difference. The HTTP www protocol, HTML, the use of HTML. So Tim's vision for the web was not the web you have today. The web you have today, as you well know, when you do a search, you get back what I call a pile of data, right? You get back hundreds of thousands of responses, and basically all it is a big pointer that says, look at this page, the thing you want might be in here, right? And then it's your job to go into that page and try to figure out if it's actually there. And I mean, I love Google, but it doesn't really do, it doesn't get you answers. What Tim talks about is that if you will put data on the web, facing the web with links, then both people and machines can explore what the relationships are, and you will get related data and much richer experience. So basically the promise is if you take raw data, and by raw data I mean it can be a web page with the raw data hidden, or it can just be data files that you face towards the web. And quite frankly, that can be the internet or an intranet in your business. You will get a lot more for it. You'll get a lot more than a single mashup. You'll actually get the ability to compute across websites, across different repositories of data, and the ability for the data to lead you to other data. So basically what that means is linked data lets you treat all of the data, anybody who's participating on the web, as though it was one massive database. So think about the kinds of things you can do with that. Basically, it makes it possible for you to collapse serial searches, those things that you do where right now you can't get the answer except by looking it up, making a note, looking up the next one, making a note, looking up the next one, making a note, and then making yourself either the answer or a little chart. This will let the web do it for you. So simple example, I admit I've made a progression over my life, started with a motorcycle, moved up to a pickup truck. And at the point I had a pickup truck, I worked in law enforcement for a while, and the guys who had all been highway patrolmen and street cops said to me, you're going to die in that little mini pickup truck. We were living someplace where typical accidents were 45 miles an hour for each vehicle. And they said, that little mini's going to kill you. Go out and buy something tougher. And so I was looking for either an SUV or a station wagon. But for whatever reason, I seem to haul a lot of stuff in my life. We always seem to be moving a tree, a sofa, an 8-foot ladder. I don't know why, but it's a regular part of my life. So when I started looking for a vehicle, what really mattered to me was how long is the cargo space, right? When I put the back seats down, can I fit a piece of plywood in there? Can I fit a ladder in there? Interestingly enough, that's a hard thing to find. That is not the statistic that they give you in the sales brochure, right? So you have to look for it. And when I had to do this, it was literally more than 100 searches, right? You go to the major publications, you look and see who are all the manufacturers, what are the models that I'm looking at now, and then you start trying to find the sales brochure is really easy, but of course you can't find the length of the cargo bed. So then you're looking for the owner's manual. Maybe there's one online. Maybe there's even a repair guide. And it's one at a time, one at a time, one at a time while you're trying to find this one piece of information for each of these. Basically, a linked data search is going to make that one search. If you can describe it the same way you would ask it of a database, it will allow you to find it all at once. So I have to apologize. I had thought we'd have some more folks here. I think people had a good time last night. So we were going to do this as a live demo, but I don't have quite enough people to do this with. So I just did it last week at the Library of Congress, and it works exactly as I'm going to show it to you. So basically, if you think about, I want to talk about how this works, right? What is it that makes this technology work? Because I think if you understand that, you can understand the power of it. You can understand what you'd want to do in your business, what you want to invest in, what you think the future is going to look like. So in the first round of this exercise, basically what we do, we play the web. We have human beings. We play the web as human beings. Everybody, we get a group of people who know each other. You need people who can name each other. So we take a group, and you write down on a piece of paper your name and the name of someone else. And we assign somebody to be the web, and that person goes from the first person. So if Liam was the first person, they would look at Liam's piece of paper, and Liam would have Laura written on his piece of paper, and the web would run over to Laura, and Laura would show her piece of paper, and Laura might have Tony, and the web would run to Tony. And basically the idea is that's kind of the way the old web worked, right? It's basically, think of it as web pages and hot links, right? You go from one link to the next link. That's how you navigate through the web. And basically what happens when you do this exercise is it dies really fast, basically because the odds that people would all link in a way that would work out sequentially so that you would get all the people in your group are very, very low. So it works some, but it's not really very robust. So the next thing we do is say, well, what if we had a couple of links? What if we had some other information? Could this work a little better? So we have everybody write down on their piece of paper a second name and some other facts about themselves, and the web gets up and goes around again. And basically, when you think about it, what did I just describe? You're going to start with one person who's going to give you two names. They're going to each give you two names. They're going to each give you two names. What happens, first of all, not surprisingly, is you get some repeats, but you actually get pretty far through a group of 20 or 25 with two, right? The incremental increase. When we did this last Friday, when we did the one link, it actually died after one person. First person named the second person had named the first person. Our whole demo was over. So we tried again. We picked a different person. We made 4 people. I mean, but it dies really, really fast. The minute you just incrementally increase it to 2, your numbers go up. Now you're getting 18 of the 20 or 25. I mean, very quickly. So you see that the minute you have a couple of links, the ability to go a couple of places, you start to pick up steam. But one of the things you really have to think about this exercise is when you do this with a person, this is what's on the pieces of paper, the functional equivalent of the links. When somebody writes down a couple of people and other things, if you were following links, all of a sudden, and I'll tell you, it really worked. I had predicted this, and it worked out amazingly. About a third of the people talk about their dog. When you say to them, write down 2 facts about yourself, they write about your dog. So I had said, you know, I have a poodle, and that's going to lead me to a poodle website, and that's going to tell me that poodles are hypoallergenic. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at an allergy website when I'm trying to figure out who's in the room. So this is pretty much exactly what the web is going to show you. And you think about when you get Google results, you're getting all kinds of stuff gets picked up in the process. What our humans saw was only, I'm in this class, this person's in this class, this other person's in this class, right? It was very neat. It was human editing. The eye and the voice, the brain just translated it. When I say, tell me next, they just automatically switch into doing the editing that we have in mind. So the question is, how do you get the web to do that, right? How do we go from where we are now to a web that can answer questions the same way a person could? So basically, this is what we talked about, right? This is the path we had, and it had a bunch of repeats in it, and it had ultimately other information. So first of all, the web is a little smarter than that, right? If you describe the same person, you have the same link, it's going to the same physical place. We have URLs, web addresses, right? So it's going to go to the same place. So you're not going to have quite so much redundancy right off the bat. But what linked data lets you do is it actually lets you describe the relationship between those links. If you think about right now, a typical link just says, go to Laura, go to Tony. It doesn't say anything about why. It doesn't say anything about the context of that relationship. So what linked data lets you do is describe every one of those relationships, that somebody was born someplace or attended something or knows someone All of those kinds of predicates, which then, if you think about a search, give you the ability to ask these sorts of questions. Now I can say, tell me anybody who knows Liam or knows anybody who knows Liam, knows anybody who knows Liam and all of the extensions of that, and who was a member of this class, right? All of a sudden, I can pick up all of that power because I have all of this other information that I can use to search against, right? I can now make my search the inclusion of the relationship of knowing. So, for example, on this one, we had a person, somebody who knew somebody, but who's not a member of the class, right? That would be very difficult for me to do based on links today. The thing that's really powerful about this when you're looking at it, and it may not be obvious to you, is these are all different websites, right? This isn't getting information from one repository. This is, let's see, no. This is getting information wherever it happens to sit. So that if you think about the kinds of things that that would mean to you if you are, running a business, or think about social networking, the way the big social networking sites work, you have to give them permission to go and get data about your friends and then copy it and put it on that website. It means that you are always chasing version control and current information. Somebody's address, right? We all keep a separate address book. Each one of us keeps an address book about all the rest of us. And then each one of us has to update that information and try to keep current with who somebody is and where they are. All of a sudden, you're talking about, I can just have my address posted. My friends can get to it. They can pull it when they need it. They don't have to. They can make a virtual address book. They can simply use the link or the name or whatever they want to identify, people I went to Sloan Fellows with, and let it compile the address book whenever they need it. So it's a very different approach to how you'll deal with the information. One of the fundamental concepts is the data can stay in the place where it originates, and everybody who needs it and is appropriate to get it can get it. And I'll talk about the appropriate part a while down. Just to be clear, I'm talking about this at the conceptual level for those of you who are really interested in the technology. Its premise isn't really about websites per se. It's actually about something that are called URIs, unique reference identifiers. They look just like web addresses, but basically the concept is I could just as soon describe a bottle of water or a clock or myself and give it one of those addresses. And by giving it one of those identifiers, everybody can point to that when that's what they're talking about, right? When people are talking about me, they can point to the address which means me. When we're talking about things where we use more than one of those, right? So I call it a dog, somebody else calls it a canine. We can have two of those and something that simply says those are the same. We do a lot of equivalencies as we learn them. We don't have to know them all ahead of time. We don't have to have, agreed as the worldwide community. We can simply post what's of interest to us and then connect it as we come across it. So, one brief pitch for my friends over there at CSAIL. I am co-housed not only with this research group, but Tim is also the founder of W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. Those are the people who bring you the standards of the internet, right? And as I always say, those are the people who make it so that when somebody enters a 6-digit code into HTML, into the thing that brings you a web page, you get the same color blue every time, right? If we didn't have standards, we would all get something different when we opened a browser. But this is sort of the level at which we agree on what happens on the web. Linked data is a newer concept. There are some other people offering proprietary choices. But the problem with any time you go with a proprietary solution is at some point it won't match up with everybody else. So there are standards for linked data. The W3C website lays them out pretty cleanly. And I just implore you to seriously consider that before you go in any other direction. So what can you build with this? I'm very excited. You're going to see in a minute. We have a student here. About a year and a half ago, we decided that it would really be sort of fun and interesting, instead of just talking about the technology. The MIT way is to build things, right? We don't just teach stuff, we build stuff. So I was with my colleagues over at CSAIL, and they had done a programming boot camp in one of the IAP sessions before. And I said, instead of just doing it as a programming boot camp, why don't we do it? Why don't we build stuff, right? Why don't we see if we could bring some Sloan students over and some of the EECS, the Core 6 students together. Let's do it so they're actually building working prototypes. I had taken New Enterprises here, which is also about getting together a business plan and a business idea and really thinking it through. And I said, why don't we do that for them? Because a lot of the original samples for linked data were very sort of socially oriented. They weren't really thinking about business and where revenue was going to get generated. So I organized a class. That was IAP 2010. And I'll tell you, it was fabulous. We had great response. We had great participation. Lots of people came. I mean, it being MIT, I was astounded. I was getting emails from other countries, people who wanted to come. And it went, typical IAP, crazy, fast. But we had a lot of really great demos. And we were asked. I did this in partnership with the MIT Entrepreneurship Center over here. And they gave me two fabulous people who are really seasoned entrepreneurs to teach the business side of the class. And so we got a request, could we make it a graduate course? So this fall we launched Linked Data Ventures. This is the first time we held it, and it does combine students from Sloan and students from Core 6. We taught the same basic concept, and I'm very happy. We have Renee here, who is going to get up in a sec and show you what he's produced and tell you a little bit about the course. But I want to give him special acknowledgement because not only did he take the course and win the class competition, but he actually was one of the students who helped us lay out sort of our concept for the class before we put it on. So without further ado, why don't you come on up? Ah, sure. There we go.
So yeah, my name is Renee. I'm a second-year Sloan student here, finishing my MBA. Just had my last class on Thursday, so only one exam left, and I'm done. So that's good stuff. Yeah, as you might guess, I will. Actually, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the class Linked Data Ventures, which was last semester. Then talk a little bit about how we used it to build Good Plates, which is a product which is currently invite only, but we're looking to launch very soon. And my team members, I met them all in Linked Data Ventures. So we have 2 students, 2 researchers from CSAIL, 1 PhD, 1 postdoc, and 2 MBAs. And we're not only like working together. Well, actually, that's the thing I want to say. We actually really like working together. And the course really helped us to, I guess, have like half a year to get to know each other without the pressure you might typically have when you're just looking for, a technical co-founder or, oh, let's build this. We really kind of sat together, got to know each other. Yeah, so let me start talking a little bit about the class. So there were 2 major parts to it, sort of the ramp-up phase initially, where we had Tim Berners-Lee, Lalana, Kagal, from CSAIL talk about some of the technical things. So one thing, URIs that came up, there's RDF, there's RDFA, there's Sparkle, which is sort of SQL for linked data and semantic web. So like a query language you would use to actually try to make searches on your data sets. We had guest speakers, great guest speakers talk to us, including Nova Spivak. He's done a few semantic web startups on the West Coast, currently founder of Live Matrix, which is sort of a schedule for the internet, so events happening on the internet. Then kind of each week we sort of worked in small teams looking at very specific areas, so industries, and trying to understand how linked data could be used. And that helped because, well, we had people from the industry come in. So Thomas Take from Reuters came in. He talked about their kind of project and what they're doing with linked data. We had Jay Myers from Best Buy come in. He talked about how Best Buy is using these technologies. And so every week we got kind of inspired and then kind of set together and trying to figure out how, if we were a startup, how could we use the technology and build something valuable. Then in the second part of the class, it was really all about building something, which is like one of the things really I came to MIT for. And this is a great example of cross-campus collaboration, building things, just trying things out without worrying too much about solving case studies, but actually, you know, trying to do something. So that was a very, very rewarding time. We literally spent almost every night of the of the week at C-Cell in the lab, and then the weekends. And we came up with a working demo, which was really quite astonishing. It took us, I think, 3 weeks to find a name. And then we used the other 3 weeks to build the prototype. So looking back, it might not have been the best way to spend our time, but all 4 of us were coding, so we actually were able to caught up quickly. So let me talk a little bit about good plates and why we initially thought, well, linked data semantic web technologies could really help us solve a problem that many of you might have as well. So all 4 of us, when kind of trying to find something, like let's say a restaurant, it's really not a great process right now. You go to Yelp, and you look for, let's say you're looking for the best steak in Cambridge, and you will do a search. And first of all, you get a sponsored link on top, which is not really relevant to the discussion, but then you get a bunch of restaurants, and most of them will have hundreds of reviews, and you will go through them, and you will try to understand what do people really think about that restaurant. And you'll quickly realize that some people might review the ambience, some people might review just the venue, the service, others might have just had a green tea. So you have all these different reviews and ratings, and nobody, maybe some people towards the end, are reviewing actually the steak that you're looking to have. And then the question still is, who are these people? Do they have a similar taste? Are they actually maybe like the restaurant owner's friend, if it's a great review, or are they the competitor across the street who's trying to destroy the business? So all these kind of constraints, and that kind of goes back to Kay's point about the serial search. So you would start doing one search, kind of looking at a few restaurants, and then you would search within the reviews to try to find the information that's actually relevant to you, rather than having just kind of one search that tries to answer that question. And we thought that, so this is something that applies to restaurants, and we chose restaurants to start with just because it's people eat out a lot more than they read books. And in order to get data for us to test our system, that was kind of a good starting point. But kind of taking a step back, and what we really want to do is we want to build a recommendation layer that actually works better than what's currently out there. And there are a few things that work. I mean, Netflix, people say it works. Amazon has a pretty good grip on things. But a lot of other areas really lack this. And especially with restaurants, when we did market research, we found that most people really kind of go to friends, family members, trusted experts, rather than turning kind of to the web, to Yelp, Zagat, and the other sources. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to bring that offline model online. And we call it the social taste graph. So basically a graph where you're connected to people who have a similar taste, and you sort of follow them for either all kinds of foods or just specific cuisines. You can already kind of see how there's a little bit of a parallel to the example Kay gave initially. You kind of connect people in our case, and by making these connections, we can actually get better search results. I won't bore you with a Yelp search for steaks. You can do that on your own if you want, but I'll for example, show you if we look for steaks on Good Plates. So if I don't already know what kind of restaurant I'm looking for, the search results will give me basically both steakhouses or restaurants that have steak in the area, and going down to a dish level. And it's not just steaks, it's kind of all kind of dishes that have steak in it. So our kind of goal is to, and and that's the other side to it. Not just have this trust graph as a basis for recommendation, but also go one level deeper to the dish level. Because, and Tim Berners-Lee actually said that on demo day, people and dishes are higher correlated than people in restaurants. And it's a quote I like, so I'm stealing it from him. And yeah, so what we are doing basically in the short term, we're trying to build this community of people, that are very enthusiastic about food, that actually take pictures of food, and there are quite a lot of people who do that already. They currently post it on Facebook, where it gets lost in the data jungle and can't really be used for good. We help them to kind of use that data, share it with people who follow them for their kind of expertise, and even kind of themselves kind of go back and look at it when they want to show it off to friends, or just kind of be reminded of where they ate out a few weeks ago. Let's see how we're doing on time. I guess kind of coming back to linked data and semantic web aspect of it. So one thing that Google is trying to get smarter. So one thing they do now, they support microformats, which RDFA, which is basically, if you would think about it, is a way to tag the information on the HTML page. So that when you do a search, for example, now already you see it for some restaurants, you will get the star rating directly in the Google search. This is because on the HTML page, they actually have an extra tag saying, oh, this is a star rating. These are the opening hours. So Google is trying to kind of make search better by using some of the technologies K also was kind of alluding to. And so we are using that, of course, as well. So for every dish, for every venue, we actually expose RDFA, so kind of semantic web tags, if you want. However, the bigger picture really is about kind of connecting data sets and really leveraging the power of linked open data. And our goal kind of going forward is to really start or helping to build this general repository for all restaurant information. So from restaurants to kind of menus. So we have, for Boston right now, we have, I think, 40,000 dishes in our database. But really trying to then connect this information with, for example, information about ingredients. On the other hand, we're tapping into the Facebook graph for identity, but we're also trying to create this trust graph, right, of which is very different from the Facebook graph, which is a symmetric graph. So by kind of compiling data about people's tastes and connecting those with the menu items on the one hand, maybe the ingredients, you can even go to searches that are, okay, I'm going out to dinner with a vegetarian and somebody who really wants to eat a steak, and I just want to have a soup. What is a great place for us to go to? And you quickly kind of go into areas where Yelp, I don't think they will ever go unless they start adopting these technologies. So that said, I think another benefit of the technology would be, in going forward, kind of our plan is to become the kind of Wikipedia for all that information, is to really kind of give restaurants the value back of their own data. And part of the problem is right now that, so Yelp and Zagat, they're so powerful because they have a lot of data. In Yelp's case, reviews. In Zagat's case, I guess, again, reviews, but also menus. But if you look at the data quality and you compare a couple of these different sites, it's actually quite bad because they don't regularly update it. There are too many sites, and the problem of having different data, like different points on the web where the same data is stored, and not having a unique identifier or a unique URI is really what's kind of not working in the sector right now. So we're trying to address that and trying to give restaurants kind of the value back that they're producing and becoming that one repository and sharing basically all the basic information, like the opening hours and menus, free with all the other sources, so that they can have a consistent image across the web. So that's, I guess, from my side. If there are any questions, I'm happy to speak to you afterwards. So all four of us are working on this for real right now. We're in the middle right now of raising a seed round. We're going to stay in Boston, and if you're in Boston, sign up to our guest list, and we'll let you in shortly, and then you can start getting our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do want to show a little bit more of your functionality, because you were as I understand, we had, where's the part that gets me back to the slider bar? The cool. Yeah, was that in your diary where you have the, no.
The slider also, yeah.
There we go. So just, do you want to talk for a second about what this is and what this is? And
so
give them a minute on
yeah, absolutely.
On the function.
So as I said before, we have this trust graph, and actually I could show one thing before that to make that more obvious. So whenever you kind of go to the site and you connect through Facebook, you'll see basically a couple of your friends already on the site, so you can directly connect to them. But then also over time, we'll kind of we'll learn what people have similar taste, and we'll make kind of suggestions to you similar to LinkedIn, saying, hey, you might know this person, or Twitter saying you might follow this person. And in this case, Tomas, for example, I look at his reviews and I'm like, oh yeah, that looks really delicious. I really want to know where he goes and what he reviews. And then I can go in and I can basically follow him for everything. Or once I realize that his taste for German food is not as great as my expectations, I would follow him for these things. So basically, what I'm doing is, well, at least initially, I'm explicitly creating this trust graph. Over time, it will be more implicit based on the data we have. And then if I do a search, I can basically use the trust level slider to say, OK, I only want to see kind of reviews or recommendations from people I directly trust for that cuisine. But I could also slide it over to the middle where it's, OK, maybe there are people 1 or 2 degrees of separation away on the trust graph that I'm still trusting. And we have a smaller factor there, because if I have a friend who I trust for French food and he has a few friends who he trusts for French food, then I can assume that there's still some sort of transitive trust element to it, but maybe not as strong as to the first person. So if I maybe not be getting kind of the reviews I want from just looking at my direct network, I could go in and I could basically slide that over, and even like kind of going all the way out to the world, where the trust graph is sort of removed, and I would get other reviews. And then the same for, well, distance is self-explanatory. We have categories. You can search for. Actually, let me just show you one thing more. If you pick a restaurant, for each restaurant, what you will get is you will get a personalized menu. So say you find yourself in the restaurant, and a lot of people have told me when I'm in a restaurant, I'm trying to look around, trying to see what other people are eating around me. So you can even do that now before you kind of head over there on the way on your phone. We have an iPhone app, so that's kind of where that comes in. And you'll basically get 3 dishes that are most highly recommended to you based on your taste graph. And then you have the full menu, of course, if you want to get more information. So say we're interested to learn more about the chicken. Oh, should scroll up again. No, where does it go? Then I'll basically see, OK, Lisa and Natalia, they have both kind of had the chicken there, and they can kind of upload their own pictures. So if they have, you can get a feeling for, is it a consistently good-looking dish, or or do I have a risk that sometimes, I might get just a small piece? And you can read the reviews of the people. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Did you want to show the RDF? I can actually show the RDF real quick. How do I do a right-click on this thing?
Oh. Challenge. He's using my computer. There we go. Is that what you want?
Okay.
No,
yeah.
you want the other
Use
side.
source. No, actually, that works.
Does it work?
That should work. OK. So what I described earlier, and I'm showing you all the magic.
Yeah,
now.
we're at Sloan.
Let me see if I find it. Yeah. OK. Well, one more maybe. Oh, no.
So there's a lot of code.
Is it already gone? I think it's already too late. Here it must be here. Yeah, so the part where it says RDF data vocabulary, so right here, you can see that each kind of data point, like Cambridge, MA, the postcode, the address, they all have the span around them. And typically, like, if it would just be normal HTML, it would maybe say something about the format. But here we really kind of define a property. So we kind of give it the identity that it is a street address, that it is, a location, it's a region, and using an ontology. And ontology is something that came up earlier, and I'm not sure how deep into technical stuff I should go, but it basically defines the concepts. And I mean, for an address, it's pretty obvious, but for menus, for example, it gets really interesting because, or even cuisines, right? You can now, somebody's looking for a specific cuisine from some area in Vietnam, and he has a name for that. And by searching for that, if we could infer, based on the ontology, that it's actually in Asia and show him Asian dishes, I mean, that's something very powerful that if you just kind of go by keywords, it's not really that easy to do. So
Great.
I guess that's all I wanted to show. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. All right. So now I'm going to take you to more of the business aspect. Here we go. Hang on a sec. Let's get this back up. All right. So one semester, as he says, three weeks of name definition, 3 weeks of coding, and there you go. So let's talk about the business, right? So what does this mean? You've heard a whole lot about what it is and how it works. Why do you really care? This is Sloan after all. So a couple of things. One, you get more accurate responses right off the bat. For example, when you search for New York today, you get the city, you get the state, right? You don't have any way really to tell Google you're talking about the city, and you don't want all the returns that are about the state. Renee was just talking about keyword searching. You say dog, you don't get anything that says canine instead, right? This, because it can link those things, will give you whatever is really appropriate to the answer, or at least much more closely than what you get today. The ability to crawl to related locations, not in Renee's demo, but in my description, right? I don't have to know every place I want to go to look for something, nor do even these web search engines. If somebody's got the link embedded in their site, you can follow. Reuse of data. For those people who've managed organizations with lots of data, and I've been in a few, trying to keep up with the version control problem is a nightmare. Storage costs aren't that bad, but still, they do tend to grow out of control. And although the storage itself is cheap, the staff that runs them isn't cheap. In many places, the facilities costs aren't cheap. And like I say, you get the answers no matter where they are. You don't have to copy everything to your location. Some of the competitive advantages, right? Pretty, I hope, fairly obvious. You get what you want faster. You get it more accurately. You can refine your customer demographics to a level you haven't been able to so far, right? When you think about what this means for reaching to your target. You could, and I'll throw out an example, enhance supply chain understanding, right? If you want to see the links, if the parties will participate and the links are connected through, you could look all the way through your supply chain for what's going on in your supply getting to you, right? Any place in the path. Also, it makes you more available. So that's all about what you want to find. What about you want to be found, right? People are spending a fortune on search engine optimization, right? I can't tell you how many emails I get every day, that are SEO, spam ads, or lectures from somebody about how I could do better. As long as you want to be found first more accurately also. You want somebody to find you when they actually want you. Because just like spam coming to you trying to sell you things, customers who aren't really customers don't help you either. You want to do this through partners, those links, right? If somebody who's the party next to me in the supply chain links to me so the customers can come all the way through, that's fabulous. Also, I want to be found by my customers because there are linking opportunities straight from them and from crowdsourcing opportunities. So a little bit about what's going on with business. And interestingly, this is a non-business description, which I think still leads to a business result. So I don't know if all of you know about TED Talks, but there are these amazing lecture series that entrepreneurs go to. They started out in the Silicon Valley area. They've spread there in other parts of the country and the world. But they're some really top thinkers, top creators of products and ideas get together and give these very short talks. In 2009, Tim went out to TED and talked about linked data, really trying to get people interested in the idea of linked data, getting people to put data out on the web so that people could use it. And one of his examples was on Alzheimer's research. There is, in fact, already quite a bit of linked data already published to the web. And I wanted to point out, it's not just websites, right? Renee was talking about HTML on your website. But the truth is whole data sets, right? People can put whole data sets facing the web. There are some fabulous tools already. The infrastructure is getting pretty well built up. IBM has a tool. Oracle has a tool. There's a small local company here called Cambridge Semantics that's built a tool that will put RDF on Excel for those of us, again, who've managed data in organizations. There's a lot of stuff hiding in Excel spreadsheets and Access databases that if you could get your hands on is really worth it. And again, I don't need to make a website. I can stick the RDF on it, face the data set to my intranet or whatever, and get the value of that data back. So he was talking about how these researchers, scientific researchers, had a problem. They were looking at Alzheimer's, and the specific question they wanted to answer, and I'm not a scientist, let's see, is which proteins are involved in signal transduction and related to pyramidal neurons, right? An incredibly domain-specific question. Well, you could put in those two things into Google with an and you got 223,000 hits. You could do that with, I don't know which of the linked data search engines, there are a few out there, and you got 32 hits that were exactly proteins with these two features. You know, that was amazing. So interestingly enough, he did that in 2009, and not too long later, Google decided to go out and buy MetaWeb. MetaWeb was a 5-year-old startup created by Danny Hillis, who's a very well-known technology grad from here. It raised $57 million in venture funding, and interestingly enough, although the purchase price is not disclosed, estimates are typically, people assume sort of a 10-time purchase price, so it could be in the 500 million range. Maybe it was in the 100 million range, but still, you know, you're talking about first movers already out there, already doing some pretty major stuff in the market. And MetaWeb is an interesting business. It had both the infrastructure for storing this information and Freebase, which is an open database that anybody can contribute to. Google has kept Freebase running in addition to absorbing the infrastructure. And what did they say about it? They actually posted on their own blog. The reason they wanted to do it was because things like searching for colleges on the West Coast with tuition under $30,000, right? Actors over 40 who've won at least one Oscar. These are not questions you can ask Google today. And they said, we think a company like MetaWeb is going to help us get there. Just before that, and this may also have prompted Google's move, Apple acquired Siri in April of 2010. It's another 2-year-old startup. It was a 2-year-old startup founded by Tom Gruber and some other folks. Tom was another artificial intelligence guy out of Stanford this time. Other successful ventures under his belt. 24 million in venture funding. Rumored price somewhere right around 200 million. Interestingly, what he did was combine 3 things. He combined voice recognition, natural language parsing, and linked data. So basically, this is an iPhone app where you talk to the app. You say, what's playing at Madison Square Garden? You know, when's the next train to Washington, D.C.? I would like tickets for the Red Sox. And it literally, it listens, it does the voice recognition, it tries to natural language parse it, and give you an answer. I actually happened to have seen Tom a month before Apple bought this business. He spoke at a conference on linked data and talked about how linked data was powering a lot of what was happening behind this engine. And again, what did they say about it when they sold? The CEO of that company said he'd like to think of it as a do engine instead of a search engine, right? Really getting directly to what you want, not just to looking around for it. I particularly like the phrase that it's a click reduction machine. I talk about how you start with serial searches, and now you're getting them down to a single search and a single answer. Really, from a business perspective, talking about changing the game. Not only are you making your customers happy because users get things faster, but your service providers are really happy. Every one of you who has a business who wants people to find you, whether it's a business to business or business to consumer, this is about shortening that path for people to get to the seller they're really looking for. And that's, that's conversion. That's how you get customers. And quite frankly, it's also what's going to drive some changes in the web infrastructure. So the first thing that I'd like to do is just say, take sort of 5 minutes. You've heard a lot of material. We do it pretty fast around here. If you just sort of talk in groups of 3 or 4, think about an idea which would be something that you have done in the last 6 months that you had to do by hand, one click at a time, writing it down or whatever you had to do, that you think this technology could do for you in one click, right? So go ahead and brainstorm. I'm just going to walk around a little, talk to you, gives you a chance to ask some questions because we do a lot of this really fast.
We do a software as a service, so we have to do services over the web.
Right.
And we work a lot with hospitals and nursing homes.
Uh-huh.
But we do all of the analytics.
Okay. Yeah. Right, I know. Right. Yeah. That's great. It's funny that you say that my folks are right at that assisted living almost point, and I've just started searching, and you're right, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. What about you? Uh-huh. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. Right. A number of our students have, every time we do the class, somebody wants to build one of those, and they keep trying. They haven't quite got one that we think is off the charts, but they know that's a need. That's really interesting. They know it's out there. Yes. So we're going to do that for 5 minutes, and then Am I doing the big boom? I'm sorry. I'm going to talk about rules. You can protect them. It's not sometimes it's totally open. Hi. I'm just listening. Which one? Oh, cool. Yeah. I don't have an iPhone, but it had a huge number of downloads really fast when it launched. Really, that was like I remember 200,000 in the first couple of days or something, and it just and it was like an unknown, but people just were crazy about it. There's a lot of really nice blogs about it. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. Right. Oh God. And it must have gone nuts.
But I don't know if that's just chasing Google or just
Maybe we have an idea. Yeah. Right. That's great. I love those stories. All right. All right. So I want to hear what you're talking about. All right. So if we could, we got a couple of minutes. Who thinks they had a really good example of a serial search they want to collapse? Who thinks they had one of the best ones in the room without having heard anybody else? This is not a Sloan crowd. Nobody's raising their hand. Okay, I got one. There we go. What do you have?
If you want to know which companies are doing better, which companies are doing worse, you kind of have to go through each call and read the call for the transcript. And if you could just identify certain words, accelerating or decelerating, and you could group the companies into. Sorry.
My fault.
You want me to start over?
You just want to summarize quickly.
Yeah, you could just parse. If there was a way to parse the information so that you could separate into companies that are decelerating and accelerating, has big implications in terms of what their stocks are going to do.
So basically, you want another one that's going to do voice recognition and then natural language parse investor calls for companies so that you can hear. They all hold a separate quarterly call, and you want to just aggregate the information about how those companies are doing.
Or separate the information into those companies that are seeing their business improve, so that you could identify those as from the thousands of companies.
Great. How about another one? Yes. Let this poor guy run.
Mine was similar, actually, because I'm at a venture capital firm, and we have 26 portfolio companies with 26 sets of financial reports, and being able to sort of say, well, what's our debt load across the portfolio, or which of our companies are EBITDA positive? You know, right now you have to go out to every single company and look at their balance sheet and sort of see.
Perfect. Perfect. We had a suggestion over here, nursing home search, which turns out to be, it's another one that's really great. It's something you do typically one time. The only thing you ever know is typically whatever they at the hospital told you, and you really don't have a mechanism for that. And those are great examples. The ones where the user does it once are really great examples because you don't have any good infrastructure otherwise, any good way to really aggregate what you need to know in that single occasion. Go ahead.
Well, contemporaneous medical privacy preferences. The default operating procedure now is that when you become a new patient at a doctor, they give you 6 to 12 pages of legal gobbledygook that has buried in it your privacy preferences for sharing information with other doctors, and it's set at that time. It's not granular, and it also happens that, for example, after you land in a hospital, your preferences for sharing your medical data in the past change dramatically. So we were thinking that if you actually set up a server that allowed the patient, which is you now, to change what your privacy preferences were for anything you might find out there, and allowed that to override decisions you had made in the past, it would allow for more effective sharing of medical data.
Great, thank you. Actually, our research group does a lot of work on privacy and privacy rules, and I'm going to mention it in just a little bit. So, all right, that's great. It sounds like you're really getting the flow of this and the idea. Some other things to think about is basically, if you think about it in the future, practically everything becomes marketing, right? So my example here, if there's anybody left who still cooks, is, or you have to do that holiday dinner once a year and you don't cook, So basically, you look up some recipes. Imagine if they are linked, and it immediately pulls, you select what you want to cook, it immediately pulls your ingredient list, figures out your location, which we all know how to do these days, and coupons if you have them, figures out the nearest stores, then goes and checks their stock about who actually has the thing in inventory. Anybody who's ever had to do, who's ever done a holiday dinner knows that you always go and they're missing the one critical ingredient. But basically that it can, in a perfect world, I figure crowdsourced first. It actually lines it up to the store aisle map, right? It actually makes sure that as you walk through the aisles, you're picking up the right things in the right aisles. And when you come home to cook it, because you don't really know what parboiling is, it gives you, you know, there are all those great words and recipes that we all kind of just, you know, go over. It would give you a dictionary. It would give you a video, whatever you needed to see the thing that was being described. And if you think about it, it's not just for cooking, right? Car mechanics, whatever it is. I use the motorcycle example because in motorcycles, historically, there aren't enough sales to justify separate manuals for every single model year. And I can tell you, there you are, you've taken something apart, you get to the picture in the book, and they sell these books for like every 5 model years. And of course, yours is not the one in the picture as you're standing on some street with something taken apart, wondering which thing in the picture is supposed to be the thing you're looking at. But with something like linked data where you don't have to worry about the publishing cost, they could literally have each model year you could actually see the exact thing that you're working on. Think about things like finding a shirt, right, that actually has the same measurements or similar measurements to one you bought previously on the web, something you like the way it fits. If somebody will expose the measurements, if the vendors will expose the measurements to the search engine. I say clothing gifts for women who don't want to reveal their size. They could have something that was private that only got revealed to the search engine. So if you wanted to buy your Aunt Tilly something, you know, a shirt, and she doesn't want to tell, you know, you don't want to ask her what size she is. In theory, you should be able to do these sorts of things. Imagine it embedded in TV and video. This is coming. I've talked to some people who are actually working in the background on some of this, that every single thing in video that you see, potentially something that you can mouse over and find out what it is, where to buy it, what its history is, all of those sorts of things. I talked a little bit about supply chain. Where are things in your supply chain? Think about analytics. So in our first lab, 3 of our students got together, total strangers, 1 week, and built this fabulous charting capability, which can take and graph things from 2 data sets, basically anywhere they are. If they're linked data tagged, so just you want to know the latitude of a location versus the GDP. You want to know the revenue and the number of against the number of employees. You want to see what that looks like. They can come from completely different places, and it can just throw together graphs for you all day long. Rules. I understand one of the major issues for everybody, of course, is I don't really want to share everything. Some stuff I can't by law, some stuff I can't by contract, some stuff I just plain don't want to. We have built technology, and there is more of it coming, which allows you to express rules over who can or can't look at the data. So even though we talk about linked open data, which is great for lots of stuff, where you can just put it facing the web and anybody can use it, there's also the ability to put some controls over it. So who has all this data, and you know, who has it, what's already out there, who do you want to ask for more stuff? So right off the bat, the government had a really large project called data.gov, which apparently didn't do so well in the budget, but we'll see. It's taken hold. It was already 379,000 data sets are already out there. So that's a lot of data already sitting out there for people to use. Interestingly, EPA was the single biggest provider. So for those of you who are in any of these environmental disciplines, there's a lot of data available. There's a group at RPI that, as part of one of their classes, has students make little demos of lots of this Gov data. And a lot of it is really commercially relevant. Things like broadband internet use, the correlation between smoking rate and cigarette tax, if you're trying to figure out, you know, if you're selling cigarettes, Medicare claims versus interstate migration, right? That's the kind of thinking. How does the requirement for medical care change as people move? U.S. residential energy consumption by compliance. I mean, by appliance. Sorry, there's a a lot of really good relevant data out there. Industry has data, and some of industry is already getting in the game. The New York Times has moved its entire index of record is now available this way. So I saw one project where somebody mapped government budgeting against the rate of stories in the New York Times. So you can do some pretty interesting things about how you create influence, right? How you create brand. There are some really good opportunities. There are regular commercial, big commercial enterprises. Best Buy was one of the first that has done end-to-end in RDF. So they use it not only internally for managing the stock and the controlled stock, but also in the website as you see it as a customer. This is the linked open data cloud for anybody who's curious. This keeps getting built. These are the data sets that not only meet the standard, but have chosen to identify themselves. DBpedia in the middle was somebody basically took Wikipedia and continues to reduce it to RDF data sets so that you can, everything that's in Wikipedia pretty much, you can pick up and use for your linked data. Firefox, interestingly, and I hear that their traction has gone way up. It's apparently coming close to the market share of Internet Explorer. Has this little tiny purple dot in the corner, and that's called the semantic radar. And it's basically looking for semantic tagging for linked data. I'll tell you, it's not perfect. For example, a lot of people, as you probably know, who aren't very web savvy, just copy somebody else's HTML to make a web page. So if they don't really know what they're doing, you often pick up that just the name of the page has some tagging in it, but it gives you something. But that will get better over time. I mean, when Siri got acquired, the CEO made some comments, apparently, I read in some news stories, that this is technology that you're watching just come on the horizon. So you're talking about 3-5 years where you're going to see even more happening. So this is pretty new. I expect that the quality of what it's telling you will improve pretty quickly. They're usually pretty fast. So really the last thing that I wanted to encourage you to do is brainstorm one more time, this time a little differently, which is to say you're all in some business or have been in some business. What data would you put facing the web to improve your competitive advantage? So again, if you want to just split into groups again and talk about, that's a harder question, right? What will give you competitive advantage by letting go of it? And I don't mean losing control, but letting people actually see it or link to it. And the only really simple, you've seen all these examples, but I always think about it this way. If you've ever been in the bookstore and there's some really great coffee table book and you're really interested and it's shrink wrapped and they won't let you look at it, I always think, it's like, okay, never mind. I'm not going to spend $100 on a book that I can't actually tell if it's what I want or not. So take 5 minutes, think about what data you'd like to put facing the web. I'm going to go that way this time. It's a harder question. Where's my brave Sloan soul who wants to say they have a really good idea about data that they want to face towards the web? Liam. Excellent.
Well, if you're a doctor or a doctor's surgery, you could put all of your opening slots, your schedule available, and then say, well, I'd like then you can personally say, oh, I need an eye appointment at this particular time. Who's available?
Excellent. Okay.
I've got a 9 o'clock appointment.
Oh,
somebody wants it.
Great. This is like open table for doctors. I love it. A new idea formed here. Quick. Somebody start writing code. Who else? What else? Go ahead.
You want to say it?
No, go ahead. You say
Well, it was your idea. Well, it was also about doctors, but more from a patient perspective to when you have a certain condition and you're looking for the right doctor to treat you, to get all that information available to you about the doctor's experience and track record and publications in that specific area.
Excellent. And the research. Wonderful. We actually, another project that we have going in the lab is on provenance. It's basically about identifying the quality of what you're getting, right? So if you're going to pull together information about their research and their experience on their patient opinions, looking at how you can actually behind the scenes sort of weight the quality of it right? And how to take it. Yeah, right. Particularly in this country, we don't do any of that. We have no Yelp for doctors, right? I know. So, another one. We have one more. Come on, guys. You were all talking.
So we were talking about an idea which we're not sure if it's legal or not, but
Yeah, definitely.
But basically, if it's kind of the reverse of price collusion. So if you as a bunch of competitors in an industry were to put out publicly the price you paid for your supplies from a particular supplier, then and you were to anonymously share this information among 15 competitors or something like that, you might be able to use this shared knowledge to drive additional pricing pressure onto the supplier to lower his price, something like that.
Okay, so we need a lawyer. I know we have a couple in the room. I'm one, he's one. But that's a really interesting idea. So
The other way would be illegal, but in that direction, I'm not sure. But our problem with that is you'd be able to do that once, and then the next time you got an order, it would come with a clause in the contract that prevented you from ever doing that again.
Well, all right. So you need some creativity. So the last thing I wanted to do is just share with you another kind of example of the power of this technology. This is a really just a wonderful, wonderful thing. What you're looking at here is what was the map of Haiti immediately before the earthquake, all right? And what you're going to see are little white flashes. When the earthquake happened, people realized there wasn't a lot of map, right? There's a lot of blank space in this map. Interestingly, there were not very detailed maps for Haiti. Apparently, that just wasn't an issue. When the earthquake happened, a group called OpenStreetMap posted to the web satellite views of Haiti and invited anybody in the public to trace them onto this map in a way that would be captured in linked data. And then other people actually put onto the map breaks in the road, the refugee camps, the medical stations. And what you're going to see is this is, on the bottom, these are the days of the month, okay? So, okay. This is really an amazing thing. So here you go. Oops. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up because you missed the beginning. I actually got you in the middle. But this is, every one of those whites is somebody adding data, adding data, adding data. This is 12 days, right? Look at what these people did in 12 days. Just volunteers anywhere in the world who happened to hear about this project could do that, and that's what they did in 12 days. That turned into one of the most significant sources of data for the UN, for the World Bank, for all kinds of public service and NGOs who were down there trying to help. That just people who were sitting in their living rooms all over the world could do this. So when you think about linked data and what it can do, it has just an incredible power that we're not used to, and it's going to be a game changer for all kinds of things that we do and the way we think about things and the way we conduct business. So I really appreciate your coming today and hearing about it early. I hope you'll take it away and talk to folks in your business or other organizations about it. And you can get in touch with us or read on the web about how it works and how to get more information. And please remember those standards. So that's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming in at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Really appreciate it.